Hello, everyone, and welcome to the next episode of the Market Intelligence Crowdstrike Coffee Chat series. My name is Marianne Antonelli, and I am the Crowdstrike Marketing Campaign Manager at TD SYNNEX Public Sector. If you've been with us before, we are on episode number 7, and today's topic is Continuing Resolution Year-End Roundup in Federal Space. If this is your first time attending the Coffee Chat series and would like to access the previous episodes, please be sure to message us in the chat box and we'll get you hooked up. Also, the Market Intelligence Coffee Chat series will conclude next month, so be sure to register for the final episode. And just as a reminder, this is an exclusive webinar for the Crowdstrike's authorized resellers. This webinar is brought to you by TD SYNNEX Public Sector, an authorized Crowdstrike distributor and the premier government solutions aggregator. Next slide, please. And before we get started, let's go over a few housekeeping items. Your lines are muted for the duration of the webinar. However, if you have any questions throughout the presentation, feel free to drop any questions in the Q&A or chat field. This session will be recorded, and right before we conclude today's episode, please be on the lookout for a link to a very short survey. Tell us how we did so we can make adjustments for future Coffee Chat episodes. And as always, if you have any technical questions, please message us directly in the chat. Next slide, please. And now for a brief introduction for today's featured barista. Susanna Patton is a senior manager for public sector intelligence with over 12 years of public sector IT procurement experience. Her time at TD SYNNEX Public Sector has been focused on management of the DoD portfolio of market intelligence assets, technology domain-specific government-wide trends, and helping vendors and partners understand their addressable markets. Prior to TD SYNNEX Public Sector, Susanna held the position of Senior Quality Control Analyst at Deltek. She holds a master's degree from Virginia Tech and a bachelor's from James Madison University, both in international affairs. Susanna currently lives in Omaha, Nebraska, with her husband and 2 children. And now, without further ado, take it away, Susanna.
Thank you, Marianne. Good morning to everyone. I'm not sure if anybody else took the coffee chat portion to heart, but I certainly did. So I will be drinking my coffee black, and I don't know what that says about me, but I will leave everyone to make their own judgments. Today, I'm going to talk about the budget, something very current in our thoughts right now. I'm sure everybody saw the news over the last couple of weeks, especially that last week of September. So I'm going to start out there, and kind of work our way through where we are now, 2 weeks later. I will talk about the federal budget, the entire cycle. So different scenarios, what should happen, what could happen, and what has happened. And then I'm going to dive a little more into continuing resolutions, which spoiler alert, as I'm sure we all know, that's what we're currently experiencing. I'm also going to discuss different kinds of appropriations, or what we call colors of money, O&M dollars, DME. And then at the end, we'll look at a snapshot of FY24 requested money for both federal IT as well as cyber funds. And then also look at employee counts and why that might be relevant for your business. And then I would be, of course, remiss now that we're in the new fiscal year to not talk about how you might want to best look toward FY24. So right off the bat, just as I mentioned, we all saw a couple weeks ago, if not these specific headlines, one's very similar to this: military families bracing for the shutdown, House Republicans failing to pass the short-term bill as the shutdown looms, shutdown imminent, all of this language, that was quite fearful, frankly, of, oh gosh, if we don't get an agreement on both sides of Congress to pass a budget, we will have a shutdown. And so that was, what we all watched that last week of September. And it was, I think, just before midnight on the 30th that President Biden did sign what would end up being a continuing resolution for 45 days. So thankfully, we didn't see the fallout from a full-on shutdown from these headlines. So with that context, right, we all saw that happen. What I want to go through now is an understanding of how the budget should work, because hopefully at some junction we end up with a budget on the cycle that it should occur. This doesn't usually happen, unfortunately, which is why it's important to know what could happen. But ideally, by October 1st, the government has passed 12 appropriations bills, which are basically just different categories of funding that is allocated for an entire fiscal year. So the fiscal year, of course, running October 1st through September 30th. And it requires the full budget requires that Congress allocates that discretionary funding to all federal agencies and programs. That's ideal, right? Everybody comes to the table. They say, okay, here's our 12 appropriations. There's agreement found after, of course, debate, and there's the budget. That does not usually happen. And then you see there on the bottom, in most cases, what we're currently in does occur. So when those full year appropriations are not reached by September 30th, then usually we enter what's called a continuing resolution. And that is essentially just a temporary period where we sustain funds from the prior fiscal year's allotment. So right now, we're in a continuing resolution for 45 days, and it is based on FY23 funding levels. And then there at the bottom, you see agencies often face restrictions on initiating new starts. So in a CR, you cannot have new programs, new contracts, or new activities unless they are what's termed an anomaly, unless they're written in as part of the continuing resolution. So you're working kind of, as was from the previous fiscal year until a new budget is agreed upon. And then here I've got another scenario that I touched on, of course, from the headlines on the first slide. It is possible that the government shuts down. So if there is not a new budget that passes, nor a continuing resolution agreed upon, then we do have what's called a shutdown. And that is where you'll start to hear the word essential a lot. So when a shutdown occurs, agencies cease all non-essential activities, and only essential employees will report to work. Now, the caveat here is that essential can be subjective to a point. So each agency has contingency plans that reveal what they call an essential function. So there's not like a hard and fast rule. It depends on the agency. So like DoD will have a contingency plan. Civilian agencies each will have their own contingency plans if a shutdown occurs. So it is not as if, there's absolutely nothing happening. That's not the case. A shutdown just severely, limits the amount of people and the amount of work being completed. But as you can imagine, many IT security related functions, especially, are deemed essential. So even if there is a shutdown, if you're, we're looking at cybersecurity and IT security related functions, as we are, on this webinar, then you can rest assured that quite a few of those will remain essential and be needed even if a shutdown occurs. And then there, I also listed what I've continued to talk through. We do currently have a continuing resolution, and it runs through November 17th. So I want to expand a little bit just to give a little more definition to continuing resolution. There's 6 points that I want to go over to just provide a little more color to the understanding. So it provides funding for certain activities, and they are typically specified with reference to the prior fiscal year's funds, right? So in this case, they would allot for the contracts that were currently existing in FY23. For the most part, those would be written in as continued to be funded as part of the continuing resolution now from FY23 dollars. So if it was ongoing, if it was something that was occurring, then the FY23 funding is still applicable to those contracts. It also gives budget authority for a specified duration of time, which is just, a few more words to say the November 17th deadline. So right now, the CR runs through the 17th. It is possible we could have another, and then that would change, of course, the duration of time. A CR can be anywhere from hours to days to months. So there is not like a limit. There's not a, either extreme. It really can just depend on what is agreed upon. And also there, in recent practice, CRs have typically provided funds based on an overall funding rate rather than specified amounts. So imagine, this bucket of money, this will be allotted, as opposed to kind of this line item, depending on what the appropriation is for, but it's more of a rate amount to continue contracts or programs with the FY23 dollars, in this case for this year. And then also, I wanted to note that the use of budget authority provided in a CR generally prohibits new activities. So I've kind of covered this already. You're not going to see a lot of new programs. You're not going to see new starts, new activities, because we're running in a kind of an as was scenario. And also the duration and amount of funds in a continuing resolution can be adjusted. And I spoke a bit to this before, but they use the term adjusted through anomalies, which means a one-off, right? So if there is a program or a contract that really needs, additional funding, or an agency has deemed it part of an essential function and they would like to supplement additional funding included in the CR, then they can mark that as an anomaly. It still, of course, has to be agreed upon for the CR to pass, but that is possible. So it doesn't always mean that only the existing programs are funded at the same level. There could be an anomaly that changes the funding. And then finally, legislative provisions which create, amend, or extend other laws have also been included. So that's kind of a piggyback on the last point. You can have different amendments, or you can write in edits to existing laws that will change what is impacted during a continuing resolution. Now here is this slide and the next one are different kinds of appropriations, or if it's easier for me to understand appropriations really as categories. So, how is the money divvied up is a good way to look at this. And most commonly in the IT world, we see O&M funding, and then DME. O&M being for operations and maintenance, and then DME is for development, modernization, and enhancement. And operations and maintenance is hopefully what it sounds like to you. These are funds that go to existing projects, contracts, work that is helping maintain equipment in what they call a state of readiness. So in other words, this is necessary to continue operations. It's nothing new. They can include expenses that are required to operate and maintain the existing environment. So that's very important to understanding O&M dollars. And then DME, then you can think of as new projects, generally speaking. So you see the definition there. They're leading to new IT assets and systems, as well as projects and activities that change or modify an existing IT system. So O&M is we've got this set up. This is our IT system. DME dollars would be, we would like to change it. We would like to enhance it. We're going to add, more to it. The system will not look the same if we procure additional items. And so you see a lot of O&M dollars included as part of a continuing resolution, whereas DME, something new, that is not going to be, we're not going to be seeing new contracts during a CR. And then R&D is another kind of appropriation, and that, of course, being related to science. So it's the collection of efforts or information toward gaining greater knowledge or understanding of the production of useful materials, devices, methods. You see a lot of R&D money in like the DoD, in DARPA, various offices like that. And so that's just another appropriation type of money. And so the graphic there on the left is really showing that during a CR, what you won't see are new programs or new projects, obviously, and we're locked in on the funding for both O&M and DME funding, because there won't be something new allotted until a new budget is passed. Okay, and then kind of expanding a little more on different kinds of appropriations. You'll hear the term colors of money. This is lesser known, I think. I think a lot more people are aware of O&M, DME, and maybe you have or haven't heard of the term colors of money. It's essentially just talking about different types of appropriations, so different ways to fund. And so I've got a couple examples here. They're relatively intuitive. So 1 year, which is usually O&M funding, is available during a specified fiscal year. So if they write in, this is 1 year funding, then it is good only for FY23 or only FY24. And then multi-year sounds like it could be, more than 2, but generally speaking, when you see multi-year as a color of money or as an appropriation, we're thinking 2 here. So they're obligated during a definite period that's more than 1, usually less than 3. So a couple years worth of funding. And then we have both unexpired and expired funds, self-explanatory. So if in the appropriation they write, these funds, will expire at the end of the fiscal year, then those are applicable only, of course, to the fiscal year that is stated, which is why, as we all know, when we get to the end of September, there's this rush and there's this, run to spend a lot of money, because often funding expires at September 30th at midnight. And so that is important that it's spent, because if it's not, then the following budget cycle, especially for agencies, they have a harder time advocating for having different spending expenditures in their budget, because they didn't utilize the funds they had the previous fiscal year. And then these last couple slides, I just wanted to give a snapshot, both of the IT budget, the requested rather for 2024, and the change overall from FY23. So these will be more as a reference for you to have an understanding of, where's the money flowing? Who should I look toward, especially this coming fiscal year? And in red, I've highlighted those who have lost. Their request is lower rather than it was in the previous year. So you can see Army there down about 11% from their FY23 enacted budget. And then DHS was down as well, about 10%. And then Air Force, and I should note this also includes Space Force, down about 14% from their FY23 level. And on the civilian side of the house, both the IT budget as well as the cyber budgets, which I will show you in the next slide, have really increased. So the civilian agencies, quite a few of them are seeing, a bump in their request for IT. So cybersecurity, threat detection, all of those related services are very, they will definitely be needed in FY24 and beyond. So here I've highlighted energy, the Social Security Administration, education, the EPA, as well as Small Business Administration. And then here, as promised, here is the cyber side of the house, so specific to cyber capabilities for the budgets. You see here, again, a lot of the civilian agencies I just listed: energy, Social Security Administration, education, got a big bump, SBA as well. So those are big double-digit changes, increase in change from the percentage requested in FY24 for their cyber money. And as I mentioned on the last slide, you want to use this information as a reference to help you scope out, what offices, if you're looking at, new insertion points, new target markets, this gives you an idea of course, where the money is flowing and who best to target. And then there on the right, these are the civilian cybersecurity funding breakdowns based on categories. So you see there, there's identify, protect, detect, respond, recover. And these are government defined categories that bucket different IT products and services across, one of those 5, and then also other. And so you see there, protect sees an increase, and then identify a slightly increased request as well. So both, great target markets to be in right now, because all of those products and services will certainly be needed in the coming months and years. And then this slide gives you, as it notes, employee counts. And this is relevant for products especially, right? So if you are looking at, say, take the EPA and you say, okay, I'm going to look at this target market because we know funding is headed that way in FY24, this will give you a good understanding of the number of seats, right? The number of people that you will need to cover with different peripherals, products, or services. So it can be helpful as a reference in understanding what you'll be approaching if you will be selling into each of these agencies. And lastly, before I wrap, just a couple quick notes for FY24. We've got everything cybersecurity related, it feels like. So the budget for FY24, the request is allocating about 5.5 billion, which is, huge. And it goes across everything from next-gen encryption, zero trust, of course, still going on, still looking at that 2027 deadline for zero trust on the DoD side, as well as control systems, enhancements, everything cybersecurity it will really be impacted in FY24. And then also just recently, the DoD released their 2023 cybersecurity strategy, and it emphasizes using offensive cyber capabilities. And really, we're looking at this protection from the threat of both Chinese cyber threats, as well as our own, domestic need for cybersecurity protocols to make sure that our networks are safe, and that there is a framework to follow from the DoD. So I think I mentioned previously, and if not, the CMMC program is still progressing. I think last year at this time, I would have told you that in the spring and summer, we would see an interim rule passed, but that time has since gone. And so now we are actually looking at implementation sometime in late 2024. So it is coming. I think there's been, a couple, we've obviously had 2 or 3 iterations of CMMC. And so at this point, it does look like they will reach, an implementation stage. It has just taken a little longer. And then also the NIST will be publishing an updated cybersecurity framework. And I'm expecting that in the next couple months, but we will see. We'll see when that comes out. So that really is going to give us, between the DoD's cybersecurity strategy, zero trust, CMMC, and then NIST framework, we're really seeing a resurgence of the newest, latest guidance for cybersecurity protocols. And then a couple additional thoughts, one for R&D, and then back to network defense as well for FY24. A lot of the R&D budgets contain cybersecurity priorities, as you can imagine. So we see AI everywhere. Feels like data, AI, and cybersecurity are our buzzwords. And of course, anything to help mitigate risk, providing resilient architecture, securing critical infrastructure, and addressing national security impacts. That is the basis for quite a few appropriations that are R&D related. And then also of note is that OMB published the memo 2318 that directed agencies to prioritize FY24 network defense and resilience, as well as threat interagency collaboration around threat intelligence. So speaking right to CrowdStrike's capabilities, this is definitely something that OMB is seeing, that across agencies, regardless, DoD, civilian, everyone is saying we have got to amp up our network defense and be sure our cybersecurity protocols are, up to par and able to protect us from any intrusion. And I think that is my last slide. It is. So thank you so much for joining us. And Caleb, I will send it back to you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And also I want to take the time to thank you for taking the time to go over this with the team. Very beneficial information. So hopefully everybody can take that and use it in their everyday prospecting and ventures moving forward. So thanks again. With that being said, like Marian mentioned before, we have one more coffee chat coming up November 9th at 11 o'clock. That's going to go over California and Texas IT and kind of a look into that and how those states operate, give you guys some insights on there. Also, like always, if you guys have questions, please reach out to your DLT sales rep that you currently work with, or the market intelligence team at marketintelligence@dlt.com, Crowdstrike at dlt.com. And also, there's going to be a post-webinar survey. So please make sure you fill that out and provide the pertinent information to help us better these moving forward. And also, if there's things that you need help with or questions, we'll be more than happy to answer those. And also, for attending, you'll be receiving a Starbucks gift card just as a little thank you for us to enjoy your barista however you see fit. Marianne, I'll pass it along to you because I think you might have a couple things to go over as well.
All right. So if you have any questions regarding this particular thing for Susanna, please put it in the chat right now. If you have any questions, anybody has any questions? Let's see. Checking it out. Any questions? Okay, I see something going on here. It says, it seems like continuing resolutions are really common. So when was the last time an actual budget was passed on time?
Good question. I did kind of reference this at the beginning, like how this should work and how it doesn't usually do that. So yes, continuing resolutions are kind of the norm. The last budget was, I want to say the last actual budget that went through the cycle correctly was 1997, 96 or 97. So it has been a long time since we've done, what we were supposed to do, I suppose.
Okay, so another one, when a CR is passed in November, does that affect the timeline a customer has to spend their new budget, or is it still September 30th?
Yeah, great question. It does. It shortens effectively the time frame for the new fiscal year. So because we are currently operating on FY23 funding, then we will not be operating on FY24 funding until the budget is passed. So that is to say that there is a tighter time frame, because assuming there's a budget passed, then FY24, of course, will end again September 30th. So that tightens the time frame. Now, that also assumes that a new budget in FY25 will be passed October 1st. So you can see where this kind of becomes a domino effect, and each year gets pushed further and further. But it tightens the time frame unless and until the new budget is passed.
Great. And let's see here. When will we know what happens after November 17th this year?
It could be today. It could be all the way up until November 17th. I do know I was following the news last night, and the Republicans have nominated Scalise as the new Speaker of the House, so that confirmation will probably, have some influence for sure of the timing. But it could be as late as November 17th. So we could get all the way again to midnight and wait, and there could be another CR. I know last year, let's see, FY23, I want to say it was late December, that the budget was passed. So we saw the same sort of lag with CRs going on. So we'll see. Could be soon, could be in mid-November.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else has any questions, please drop it in the Q&A section of the screen here. I'll wait a couple of seconds. Going once, twice. Okay, thanks everybody for hanging out with us, and we will see you soon for the next episode of the Market Intelligence Coffee Chat series.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.